today's subject, I'd like to explore how to keep angelfish and discus fish together in the same aquarium. Alright, so before we start that, I'll give you a little story. My friend yesterday checked out my channel and is like, listen Isabella, your content is great, but you kind of talk like a long lost encyclopedia, and it's better for your viewers that you get straight to the point because they kind of have a short attention span with your long stories. So today what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna summarize it, get straight to the point. Alright, so in order for you guys to keep angelfish and discus in the same aquarium, there's something very important you have to understand. Angelfish are like the strong-minded cousins of the discus. They're pretty much in the same family. They come from the same regions originally in the wild. They're both cichlids, and the only difference is that the discus are the fancy and colorful and sensitive cousins of the angelfish. So they're much slower to adapt to an environment, to get to the food, and they're very easy to stress. Meaning, if the conditions aren't perfect for the discus, those ones will suffer greatly in your aquarium. Whether there's angelfish or just tetras in your tank, you have to make your discus happy as a #1 priority. Otherwise, it won't even work with anything else. But yes, the answer is yes, you can keep angelfish and discus in the same aquarium. No problem. So, let's start with the specs that you first need to have in your aquarium in order to successfully keep your discus. So, #1 is the size of your tank. If you want to successfully keep some discus, you have to start with a bigger tank because they grow to 6 inches. Now, a 6-inch fish cannot live in the 20-gallon, right? You have to start at 75 gallons, and pretty much the sky is the limit. They do not like to be alone, so you need at least 4 discus to make a group. I prefer to keep 6 and more just because they're more comfortable, and they also are cichlids, so they tend to pick at each other. So if you have like 3 strong ones and 1 little floosy, well, that ain't gonna be so good. So start with a bigger tank, 75 gallons and more. That's the ideal. If you can go bigger, go as big as sky. The temperature. Discus are extremely sensitive to temperature because temperature is what regulates how well they grow, how well they metabolize their food. And if your temperature is too low, they're just gonna starve themselves to death and become black and just not act right. The angelfish, on the other hand, they don't care what temperature. I've kept them in 24 degrees, I've kept them in 30 degrees, I'm talking Celsius. So they don't care. Make your discus happy first. Temperature should be between, I don't know, 27 to 29 Celsius. In here, it's like at 86 Fahrenheit, so it's up to 30 Celsius. Make your discus happy with temperature as a #1. All right, and also, if you're gonna keep a younger discus, if you're growing up your discus, you have to keep the temperatures pretty high. 28 to 30 Celsius is the perfect temperature for your discus to grow and keep up a fast metabolism so they can eat a lot. Another thing that's really important is your water chemistry. A lot of people will say that you need very soft water for discus, which is absolutely true for wild discus or wild discus that you just brought into captivity just to get them adapted to your water, whatever your local water pH is. But what's more important than how soft your water is that your water has a stable pH. You cannot mess this up. You cannot start playing with the pH unless you hit it like spot on every time. They will adapt to any pH, and I'm saying between 6.5 and 8, as long as it's stable at every water change. This is very important. They do not like fluctuations in pH. Also, along with pH, the other water chemistry is zero nitrite, and maximum 10 parts per million of nitrate. 0 would be better, 5 is more doable, 10, you gotta start doing your water change more often. Now, because you will be feeding your discus a lot every day, up to like 2 to 6 times a day, it's really optimal that you do your water changes if not daily, at least weekly. But you have to keep in mind to always check your water chemistry with some tests that are available. You know, you don't have to get the most expensive test. Just get a test, sort of like API, that will tell you if you have a lot of nitrate in your fish tank. With that comes good filtration. You absolutely need very good filtration in your Discus and Angel aquarium. I recommend to have a strong canister filter or two, so you can do one at a time when you do their cleanings. And also inside of the filter, what I recommend is 3 specific things for chemical filtration. You need activated carbon, you need zeolite, which sometimes comes in a pack, which are mixed zeolite and carbon. Carbon removes organic waste, zeolite prevents ammonia spikes. And the third one, which is super uncommon, it's peat moss. Peat moss will actually soften your water and also absorbs heavy metals out of your water, or any metals pretty much. So do some research about carbon, zeolite, and peat moss, and you'll see they're really necessary inside of your Discus tank filters. So now that we covered the chemistry, let's get down to feeding. As I said, young discus need a lot of feedings a day, a lot. Between 2 and 6 is optimal. So you're basically adopting babies that need round-the-clock feeding. They would prefer some good foods. Frozen foods is my go-to for babies. Everything I recommend except frozen or dry freeze bloodworms. I made previous videos about it. The whole internet can argue me about these things not giving your fish tapeworm, but every time I had clients that fed bloodworms to any of their fish, actually it doesn't really matter for smaller fish, but any cichlid will get some problems eventually on bloodworms. And they're also not the most nutritious things to feed your discus. I recommend more brine shrimp and some other seafood mixes that you have at your local pet store in the frozen section. Make sure to always rinse it before you feed it to them, because that frozen fish food is frozen in nitrate. Another alternative is I have several recipes of do-it-yourself fish foods on my channel. I'll put the links below in the description. I'll put it on the screen now. So these are very good alternatives. Like I said, also every frozen food, which is live meat, will pollute your tank, so keep your water changes strong. You also need food that slowly travels across your aquarium, because discus are slow, and I'm sorry to say that, but they're stupid to get to their food. If it's not floating somewhere in a cloud in front of them, they just don't see it, they don't acknowledge it. So for your discus to catch up on eating, you need food that will just go all over your aquarium, travel, and that they can see. This leads to the next point, decor. You cannot have with smaller discus, especially smaller. The big ones will deal later with them. Especially with growing up discus, you cannot have a fully planted aquarium. They're not very intelligent. I mean, they're intelligent for what they are, but they don't see the food. And if you have a completely grassed up bottom, they just will not see the food at the bottom of your tank when it falls down. So you need a lot of open space. I'll include a clip of what my bottom looks like so they can get to the food, but it's very important to have a lot of open space in your aquarium so that they can search for the food, get to the food, and eat it already. So now that you have covered all the points of how to keep your discus happy, let's talk about how to keep them with angels. Because through this whole story I just told you, angels were included, but we did not give them the attention they deserve. How to keep discus and angels in the same tank? It's actually very easy, but you have to do it smart. You have to keep twice as many discus as you keep angels. Just because discus, if you put one discus with, let's say, 3 angels, guess who's gonna get to the food first and who's gonna get stressed and stay in the corner and turn black? You guessed it. The discus will turn black and get depressed and let himself starve to death. So they have to outnumber their stronger cousins, the angels, in order to thrive inside of the aquarium. Also, something that I've learned with experience is that you have to first introduce the discus in the aquarium. Let them do their pecking order. Let them determine their territory. And then, once that's done and they're kind of grown up a bit, about 2, 3, 4 inches discus, then you can introduce angelfish. Preferably juveniles, like the ones I have in this aquarium currently. Less numbers, obviously, half as much as you have of discus, and trust me, they will adapt just fine. The discus, the angelfish I have in this tank currently, I literally scooped out of my other tank last night because their long, beautiful fins were getting chewed up by my other cichlids in there, and it was feeding time, so both tanks had like flakes in there. And I just scooped them, put them in the discus tank, and guess what? The same second, they got to the food and started eating. They don't care. They don't get stressed. Angelfish don't get stressed. Unless we're talking about autumn angels from the wilderness, the common ones we have in aquarium, as long as the temperature is the same, the water chemistry is the same, just put them from one tank in the other, it'll be fine. So get your angels at the same time as your discus, grow them out, and then just put them in the same tank when both parties are ready. And you'll see there'll be no problem. They won't even like interact with each other. They won't like harm each other because the discus are already comfortable. It's their home. And the angels, they adapt really quickly. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not already subscribed, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I upload weekly nice little videos about animals and vlogs and other subjects of all sorts, and hit that notification icon, which looks like a little bell there, so you get my latest notifications into your email. All right, so I'll see you soon. Bye.